autonomous system data. So once in a while, he'll send me some things, and he'll say, here, map this out and figure out, who's the most central node and who's clustered and so on. So this, again, is just a very, very small part of the internet, but these are all autonomous systems, and they're connected to each other by the routing protocol. So one routes to the other. And we see that the autonomous systems are much more in a kind of a hub and spoke design as opposed to a social network, which is a much denser network. It doesn't have the same kind of hub and spoke architecture or topology. So we can sometimes tell what type of network we're looking at by the patterns that we see in it. So usually networks like this that have lots of hubs and spokes are usually man-made networks, whereas networks that have a lot of interconnectivity are often emergent networks, so either social networks or biological networks. I did some work with this academic in Spain who had gathered data on the Spanish blogosphere. He had gotten data on like about 1,000 different blogs mostly in Spain, but these are all that use the Spanish language as the main language. He sent me the data, and we did some simple analysis to see, who are the dominant blogs and who are key connectors and where are various clusters. These are tech blogs, these are political blogs, these are something else. So again, very simple data. Who was actually pointing to whom in the blog posts. And you could do blog networks a couple ways. You can look at the blog roles, so who mentions who in the blog role, but blog roles aren't always accurate, and they tend to get less and less accurate as time goes on because people don't change them day to day. But if you look at the posts of who's pointing to whom in a post, you can get a very accurate picture of kind of the social network of a particular area. And we also did something like this for Northeast Ohio, but I don't have that picture up here. Another interesting blog map was this one, where there was this woman in New York. She was a PR executive, and one day fell ill, went to the hospital, and discovered that she needed a liver transplant, and she needed it within like 2 weeks. So all of her friends, many of them whom were bloggers and other people in the PR industry, started to blog about this, that help Sherry find a liver. And so a couple of them set up websites, and those are the magenta or the pink colored nodes. And these websites told people that if you know somebody that can donate the organ or so on, here's the information that's necessary. And then the green nodes are all the different blogs, and the blue nodes are the mainstream media that picked up the story. So what we actually did, this is just one snapshot in time, but we took like 3 different snapshots. We took it about 4 days after this news broke, and then we took it at this time, and then right before they found the donor. And so it was interesting how it started over here with this one on the far right, this O'Doer's PR blog. It started there, and it kind of spread to the rest of them. But as you notice, as people blogged about it, they always pointed to the 2 sites that had the information that people needed to be able to help her with her transplant. So I'm sure everybody's got an iPod, right? Or knows somebody that has an iPod. And most people, again, we were talking about this earlier, about how everybody thinks that innovation happens by just one individual. So, Apple gets all the credit for doing the iPod, and Steve Jobs gets most of the credit for having Apple do the iPod. But actually, Apple started with a very small group there, with a very small ecosystem. That's the group on the far left there. That was in 2001. And all those companies got together, and Apple was kind of the ringleader, but all those companies had to come together, share their technology to create the initial iPod. And then in 2004, the Apple iPod ecosystem had grown much larger. All these magenta-colored nodes were various suppliers of add-ons to the iPod. You had now competitors coming in, the yellow nodes. You had the record companies involved with music that they were providing either to iTunes or to other places. And so this whole ecosystem was growing. And now in 2007, this ecosystem's probably 2 or 3 times as complicated as you see there. So again, you start small, and industry ecosystems can grow very big. And what we can do with these networks is not just map them out and show what they look like, but we can measure them too. We could find what are the most central nodes, what are the most connected nodes, what are the nodes that act as bridges, so that in order to get from one part of the ecosystem to the other, you have to go through this bridge, you have to go through this node. Which ones are brokers or gatekeepers? So anyway, 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I had already started my business, and I was kind of a struggling, software entrepreneur, management consultant, and things weren't going that well in 2000. 2001, things started going better, and then all of a sudden 9/11 happened. People just didn't want to talk to consultants anymore, especially not independent consultants. So after 9/11, kind of my whole world came to a halt, and so I had a choice. I could sit there and watch CNN and watch, for the 54th time the planes hit the buildings, or I could start to do something different. And I kept hearing this term, terrorist network, and I thought, well, if I'm supposed to be this expert at then I should know what one of these looked like, but I didn't know what one looked like. So I called some of my friends who were also experts at networks, and they said, yeah, we don't know what one looks like either. And so they said, we know a little bit about criminal networks and things like that, but nobody had really mapped a terrorist network before. And if they had mapped it, it was, at the NSA, and they don't publish their work. So I thought, well, try to map it. And what I discovered was that after 9/11, the newspapers had all sorts of information about who was connected to whom and who was involved and so on. So slowly, I started to map this information out. And so eventually, you'll see we got the full map, but the map really started with these 2 people. And these 2 people were actually known before 9/11. CIA knew about these 2 people, knew that they were connected, didn't know that they were in America, but knew that they had attended an Al-Qaeda meeting in Malaysia. And so if we would have been doing this type of analysis to these highly suspect people, we would have now taken their direct connections, and this could have been done with perfectly legal surveillance. Didn't have to do any of the stuff that the Bush administration's been doing. This could have been done with FISA warrants, and because these 2 people were known suspects, and everybody around them now are the direct connections. And we can see that I've labeled the people that were on the planes in 9/11 by color, and we could see that already many of the people are starting to show up. So these are 1 step away from the original 2 suspects. And then if we go 2 steps away, which I talked about before, we see that we have everybody that were on the planes. And we also see Mohammed Atta right here, who was eventually figured out that he was the ringleader. And we see how important he was. And he was the ringleader. So what he really was he was the project manager. So he was the one that had to get things done locally. And we don't see Osama bin Laden or any of those other names on here because they were back there. They had given this assignment. These people came over here and did this project. And so we see how everybody was connected. We see who all the people were on the planes. And we also see that the pilots were some of the key connected people. And one of the things that really got me going in this whole mapping process was this particular matrix that showed up in two places. I think it showed up in the New York Times, but I found it in an Australian paper online. And it basically gave the hijackers who was on what plane, and then it even started to give some information about how they were connected. So, you know, these two people went to school together in Germany, and two people were known to have lived together in the U.S. and so on. And so that's how the network started. So every day for the rest of 2001 till the end of the year, got up in the morning, would check all the newspaper sources and add to the network. And luckily I was doing this because around Thanksgiving I got a call. And I got a call from a journalist that was writing an article for Business 2.0. And he was writing an article for how we were responding using science to the terrorist threat. And he had written something that had mentioned me before, and so he said, Valdis, you're the network guy. You know, would you happen to have something on the terrorists or know somebody that does? And I said, well, yeah, I just happen to have worked on it, and here it is. And he said, oh, well, this is great. And they had also gathered some other information, so we took his information and my information, put it together, and I got it published in the December 2001 issue of Business 2.0, and it was a good marketing piece for a small-time entrepreneur on the west side of Cleveland. So here is then the map after the 3 months. So this was basically the map that got published in Business 2.0. We fixed it up, made it look a little nicer, and drew the pilots together here. And again, we see how key they were because they were these are them right here, and we see how connected they were. So in one sense, Al put a lot of resources into these 4 people, and it was really not the wisest thing for them to do because by being so well connected, they were probably the most discoverable of everybody in the network, and they were also the people that had the most skills to get things done that they were trying to do. So in that sense, it wasn't the wisest approach on their part, but they were able to get away with it because we weren't aware of what was going on. So some other non-standard networks that I've worked on are book networks. So these are based on data from Amazon that look at which books are bought together. So it's kind of a social network of books. So I went on Amazon today, and there's a new book that's coming out by George Tenet. And it's not out yet, but it's called At the Center of the Storm. But people are already pre-ordering it, and these are the books that the people that are ordering this book or that will buy this book have also bought. So people that are buying this book have bought the 1% solution, have bought the State of Denial, and that then connects these books together. So these books are like friends because they're being bought by the same people together. And so what we do is we can then draw a map of the books just like a social network. And what I did back in 2004 was I drew this map, and I hadn't colored the nodes at all. They were all gray. And then I let the software organize the network, how it does according to its algorithm, and it came up with these 2 obvious groups with a in the middle.